quote by Edward de Bono from Six Thinking Hearts, and he said, "The solution to a problem is often the answer to a question we haven't asked yet." So the reason I'm using this quote is because most people don't see the need for Compose multi-platform because we didn't really notice or we didn't really like notice the problem that building for various platforms, building UIs for various platforms, we didn't really like experience the problem. But Compose multi-platform is here to help us, share one UI across various platforms. And this sometimes you could say it's a solution that people didn't really see coming because it wasn't really anticipated. It wasn't really a pain point that people could notice. Okay, meet me. My name is Otudor. I am an Android developer and technical writer. I love contributing to open source. I am a past outreachy intern and I also mentored at ODKX. I love writing. I love sharing and breaking down complex um, you know, programming concepts, and I'm also passionate about contributing to the growth of women in tech. I'm Women Tech Makers Ambassador, and I love singing. I love enjoying music. So in my free time, I'm always enjoying music, indulging in my passion. Next slide. So basically, what is Compose Multiplatform? Um, Compose Multiplatform is like a declarative framework which makes it possible for you to build user interfaces once, and then you're able to share it across multiple platforms using the Kotlin programming language. Um, why is it important, and what's so unique about it is that you can actually share UI code across iOS, Android, desktop, and web. So one UI code can actually run on both your iOS devices like your iPhones, your iPad. It can also run on your Android devices, or basically your laptops that have Windows, Linux, or Mac OS on it. And currently, in the experimental phase, they're also working on making it possible for you to share your UI across websites too. So, what are the benefits of Compose multi-platform? Basically, first of all, like I said earlier, Compose allows you to write UI code once and share it across these various platforms I've mentioned before, your iOS, Android, desktop, and web. So this, reduces or cuts out entirely the time you would normally spend to build your UI components for iOS, your UI components for desktop. So all those time is eliminated and it actually increases the development time. Also, you can use one UI and one UI API for other platforms. So Android developers that are familiar with Jetpack Compose don't need to go to start learning new frameworks or APIs, right? They can use their previous knowledge of Jetpack Compose to build one UI that's going to run on both iOS devices and web and also on desktop. So this, as you can see at the bottom of the screen here, you can see the a sample code of a typical Jetpack Compose button. So basically, it's still Jetpack Compose you're going to be using to develop UI while using Compose Multi-Platform. Also, Compose multi-platform makes it easy for platform integration, right? So the common UI is built in a separate model, and then you can, implement specific features in your specific platform. So this way, if you probably want to show a different text for your iOS users, you can still use the same text view, but then you can, like override or implement the kind of text you want to show your iOS users or desktop users using Compose multi-platform. And yes, the Compose multi-platform has an excellent ecosystem. We have a lot of active users and active developers. Like I said earlier, it's an open source framework. So we have a lot of contributors, and we also have a lot of support for Compose multi-platform like Ktor, Coin, and SQL Delight. These are platforms that support dependency injection and basically passing. So yes, so we've talked about the benefits of Compose. What are the limitations of Compose multi-platform? Firstly, Compose multi-platform is still under development. Like for instance, currently the as of right now, the iOS is still in the alpha stage. What I mean by alpha stage, or what we actually mean by alpha stage, is it has been accepted to to develop Compose multi-platform for iOS, but then it's still being actively developed, so it's not advisable to use it for production apps. We can as well as try it to try it, experiment with it with your sample projects and all of that, but then it's not really advisable to use it on production apps because most of these APIs might change because they are under development. And web currently is experimental, so they're still experimenting the possibilities and a lot of frameworks, and they're still, it's kind of like a lot of, it has a lot of bugs at the moment. So yeah, so Compose multi-platform is still under development. And also currently, Compose multi-platform for desktop is stable and also for Android, but then some features are not supported across all these platforms yet. For instance, you can't use Compose multi-platforms on Windows 34 bits, right? It's only, you can't use it on Windows of 32 bits. You can only use it on 64 bits um, Windows operating system or anything lower. And lastly, last limitation I'll point out here is that Compose multi-platform is still fairly new. So we have a small community and you have limited resources. So you're not going to have access to as much resources. Probably when you're facing a problem, you'd probably be the first person encountering that problem, right? So you're not going to have as much resources as you would for a framework that has been here for a couple of years. Yeah, so those are basically the limitations of Compose multi-platform. And yes, how do you get started? So before you get started with Compose multi-platforms, you need to set up your development of environment. So in this section, we're going to like basically go across the different steps or things you need to get sorted out before you can begin developing for Compose multi-platform. Firstly, you need a Mac with a recent version of Mac OS. Sorry to the sorry to the non-Mac users, right? Okay, so the reason we need a Mac is because you would basically, when you're building for iOS, you would need to build with a Mac. It's just an iOS constraint, right? Yes. And then secondly, you need to download Xcode, and you can install the Xcode application by clicking on this link here. It will link you to the App Store where you can download the Xcode. Xcode is basically a development software, a software development kit for where you can build iOS applications. And then also you would need Android Studio. Would expect most Android developers to already be familiar with this tool, but if you're not, you can also download your Android Studio from the link here on step 3. So firstly, you need a Mac with recent version of Mac OS so that it could support the version of Xcode. And secondly, you need Xcode. Thirdly, you need Android Studio, and we are not just done yet. Fourthly, you need to install the Kotlin multi-platform mobile plugin in Android Studio. And this is quite simple. In your Android Studio UI, you just go to the settings, plugins, and then you search for Kotlin multi-platform mobile and you install and follow through with the steps. And fifth, for number 5, you need the CocoaPods dependency manager. So you need to set up your environment to work with CocoaPods. There are a lot of ways to go about this, so I didn't really like put it on these slides, but then with the link attached to the site. You can go and see the different steps to set up CocoaPods dependency for your PC. There are different ways and different installers you can use to set up CocoaPods. And finally, you need KDoctor. So the reason you need KDoctor is it helps you diagnose your PC to let you know if your development environment is ready for Compose Multiplatform. So how you can install KDoctor is quite simple. You can just type in brew install KDoctor on your terminal and you're good to go. Um, so yes, next you're going to check your environment. Like I said earlier, KDoctor is used to, it helps you to like run a diagnosis or to run a check on your PC to confirm if you're well set up on your for Compose Multi-Platform development. As you can see on the screenshot, when I ran this as of yesterday, right, it would show your ticks if you've gotten the right operating system or you have the right version of Java installed, CocoaPods, if you've installed CocoaPods and you have Xcode installed also. And it will also give you recommendations like it did for me here to update KDoctor to the latest version. If you're having issues or probably you've not installed Xcode yet, right? And when you run KDoctor, instead of seeing a check mark here in the box, you're going to see an X to show that your Xcode is not properly set up. As you can see here, it says your system is ready for Kotlin multi-platform mobile development. So let's get started. All right, so let's get started. What is the best place to start your journey or with Compose Multi-Platform? The best place is the Compose Multi-Platform repository and documentation. I said at the beginning of this session that Compose Multi-Platform is open source, so you could actually go through the repository, see if there are things you can contribute to. You can also raise issues, and then you can also go through the documentation and propose changes. So there is a link attached to this particular slide here, and you can also see, I think at the resources section of the slide of my slides, you would see the various links to every everything I've talked about basically. So yes, still at the best place to start, right? You've gone to the Compose multi-platform um, repository. You can also check out a sample Compose multi-platform application template. You can see it. I've attached the link here. Basically, when you run this template, it's going to give you this result here. These are screenshots gotten from running the template. This is for the Android, iOS, and the desktop platform. It's not really implemented for the web. Like I said, the web is still under experiment. It's still in experiment mode. Should I say that? Okay, so yes, so when you click on this link, it's take you to the repository that has the Compose multi-platform templates where you can download and see what the code looks like. And in future slides, right, we're also going to see various code snippets from this Compose multi-platform template. And yes, so let's get started and take a look at what the Compose multi-platform project structure looks like on Android Studio. Firstly, switching to the project view, we can see that typically a Compose multi-platform app at the moment would have 4 modules. Firstly, there's the shared module, which is down here, the last one. Yes, the shared module contains, this is where you see your Compose multi-platform code. And then this is also the module that contains the common logic you would share between your applications. I'm not sure if I said this earlier, but Compose multi-platform is built on top of Kotlin multi-platform. So this is basically how it's similarly how the a Kotlin multi-platform project would look like, except for the desktop application and the Android. Say so. So the shared like I said earlier, the shared would contain the Compose multi-platform code, and it would also contain common logic that would be shared between the Android, iOS, and desktop application. So also we have the desktop app module. So this module basically contains the all your desktop platform specific code. Same with the Android contains our normal Android platform specific code. It's both the desktop and the Android apps are Kotlin modules, and yeah, and for the iOS, it contains an Xcode project that built into an iOS application. So we're going to see how they relate with the shared module. We can see here from the module dependency that Android application, the iOS app module, and the desktop app module all depend on the shared module, because the shared module is where you basically have your shared UI code, and you'd also have, if you're using Kotlin multi-platform, you also have your shared logic there too. So basically, they depend on this, and this shared model builds to a basic Android library for the Android module, and it's going to be like a CocoaPods dependency for your iOS app when you open your iOS project on Xcode, and for your desktop app, it's going to build like a normal library. So inside the shared model, we have various directories. You can see here that we have the Android main, the common main, the desktop main, and the iOS main. And although it looks, self-explanatory, but then let me just explain that the common main contains UI components and, utilities that will be shared between both the iOS and the desktop and Android platforms. So it contains the common UI elements, and then the Android main and desktop main are platform specific UI components. And this is also where you can, like I said, override some, like your text. You can specify the text for Android and iOS, and we're going to see that in the next couple of slides. All right. We've looked at the project structure. What we're going to look at now is a sample code snippets from a Compose multi-platform project. The link, which was linked from the Compose multi-platform template, which was linked earlier in the slides and would also still be linked in the resources. All right. So this is the first sample code. If you're familiar with Jetpack Compose, it looks like a regular Jetpack Compose app, a regular Jetpack Compose code. The material theme is the general theme of the app. So with Compose Multi-Platform, you can set your theme settings once and for all. And then you can see the column. The column, if you're not familiar with Jetpack Compose, the column is kind of like it arranges objects or UI objects, should I say UI components, in a vertical manner. So if you have a column and then you have a button and then an image, the button will come first and then the image will come next. Basically, that's what a column does. And then you can see inside the column we have a button, and the button has an on-click event, which would, update the greeting text to hello and then the get platform name. And it will also, like change the boolean whether to show an image or not to show an image. About the get platform name, you can check on line 34 of the code snippet. You can see it's an expect function. I'm going to show you, what the implementation of the expect function is like. The expect function works like interfaces where you, declare methods for, your classes. Then the classes that inherit this, would have to implement it in their own classes. So this same way, this expect function here, right, it's going to be implemented by in the iOS module you're going to implement the get platform name in the iOS module, you're going to implement it in the desktop, and you're also going to implement it in the Android module. So let's see. So this is what it looks like, right? It's called expect and actual. So expect is like the contract stating what the method that should be, implemented or what should be returned, while actual is like the implementation of that contract. So you can see here for Android, the get platform returns its string called Android, and then for iOS, this is in the iOS main, excuse me, in the iOS main, the get platform returns iOS, and for desktop, it returns desktop. So this is a way that um, I think in our previous slide, I showed where we have the common code and then we have platform specific. So yeah, this is a way, a show of that, because we have the common code that does, that shows on button click. This is where the logic is. When you click the button, you show hello and then a platform name. And then in the platform level, we specify what string or what text exactly should be shown beside hello. Um, Next, we're going to go through how you can run a Compose multi-platform application, how you can run the Compose multi-platform, a typical Compose multi-platform project. So firstly, to run on a desktop, you you could actually, the interesting thing about Compose multi-platform is that you can run both of like all your applications and all your target devices from Android Studio, which is very convenient for a typical Android developer, right? So in your to run on on the desktop, right? If you click down below, you can see here on the bar that we have the desktop app with a button, like an arrow down button below. Okay, when you click below there, you also see a pop-up for a drop-down menu for editing your configurations. You'll see that later. And you also see a drop-down for your Android app and also for your iOS app. So for your desktop application, right, to run on your desktop application, all you need to do is to select the desktop application in the list of run configurations and click run desktop application. And then in your MacBook, because you need a MacBook to use Compose multi-platform. So in your MacBook, you're going to see a pop-up of your application running on your desktop, right? And you can also run your task on Gradle by, typing the gradle.run command. Also, if you want to run on your Android device, you can, same thing here, but then you select the Android device configuration, the Android app run configuration rather, and then you select the virtual device you would want to run on. I'm sure a lot of Android developers will be familiar with this. You select the device, and then you click run. You can also alternatively, you can run your Android app by typing gradle w install debug on your terminal. So, and finally, to run on an iOS device, it's pretty much the same thing. You can see here what the drop down menu option looks like. You can see the Android app run configuration. You can see the desktop app run configuration, and you can also see the iOS app run configuration too. So for to run on iOS, right, you select the list of configurations, right, and then you select your iOS Android app, pretty much what we did before, and then you select the particular device you would want to run on. When you select the iOS app here, it's going to show a couple of devices that you can choose from, target devices you can choose from. So you can select whatever device, if it's an iPhone 14 or an iPhone 13, and then you click the one button. Pretty much the same thing. This is a screenshot of the application running on an iOS device. So that's basically it's quite straightforward and you know kind of like the same steps. So we've come to the end of our brief introduction and exploring Compose Multi-Platform with me. Here are the resources I talked about earlier. So this is a link to the Compose Multi-Platform documentation. This is also the link to the templates we used to run Compose Multi-Platform. And then you can, when you download the template, you can also see the code snippet I shared in the slides, and typically links to download Android Studio in case you don't have one, Xcode, and then the link to set up CocoaPods dependency. Thank you all so much. If you have questions, maybe you could type on the comment section. Alela, I'm not sure how that would work, or you could send me a DM on Twitter at Lamos Paris. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Love.
Thank
I
you.
guess one of the things that someone has said is Compose Multi-Platform is looking really cool.
Thank
Um,
you.
Again, if you have questions, please feel free to post it on the chat section. Okay. Love, kindly tell them how to reach out to you.
Can I share? Aleda, I don't think I quite got your question.
Yes, in case somebody has questions regarding the Compose Multi-Platform. Oh, sorry. I was saying, in case somebody wants to reach out to you, can they just reach to you on Twitter?
Yes, yes, you can send your questions via DM. Okay, yes, I think I see a question. I'm not sure. Let's see. Alela, can you hear me? I think I was cut out
Love,
for a bit.
it's actually the
Yeah, can you hear
network.
me
So
now?
I'm going to be highlighting the question. Yes, I can. Can all Jetpack Compose APIs work perfectly on multi-platform side? This is a question from Thompson.
Yes, yes. All the APIs in Compose multi-platforms are still the same ones that have already been used, tried and tested in Jetpack Compose. So yes.
Okay. The next question comes from Glory. How is Compose multi-platform different from Flutter?
Can you say that again?
How is Compose multi-platform different from Flutter? From Glory.
Okay. Okay. Well, firstly, Compose multi-platform is built natively with it's built natively with Kotlin, with the Kotlin language, right? And this means that Compose is basically has similarities to the Kotlin programming language. And yes, I know that Flutter is also a reactive UI framework, right? But then Flutter uses Dart, the Dart programming language, while Compose is, basically Kotlin. And also, in terms of how do I explain this? Okay, in terms of working, right, you use Compose multi-platform with Kotlin programming language, right? While when you're using Flutter, you're using it with the Dart programming language. That's basically the two difference. And of course, like I said earlier, Flutter is more matured and it has, more resources, larger community, and performance wise, I would say Flutter has a larger, larger community because of how long it has been in place, like how long it has been used. And Kotlin, on the other hand, Compose Multiplatform is fairly new. So I would say the Compose Multiplatform has a lot of potentials based that it is built on Kotlin programming language, which is very lightweight and very flexible, and compared to Flutter. So I hope I answered your question, Glory. You were asking how Compose Multiplatform is different from Flutter. I'm not sure if the comments are refreshing from my end.
You can answer the
Okay,
question.
I think Tashinga asked how Compose Multiplatform is different from Kotlin Multiplatform. Well, basically, Kotlin multi-platform, Compose multi-platform is built on top of Kotlin multi-platform, right? I think I said earlier on while I was presenting that when you look at the shared, like the structure, it looks really similar to Kotlin multi-platform. That's because Compose multi-platform is, like built on top of Kotlin multi-platform. The only difference is that with Kotlin multi-platform, right, you're only sharing like logic, basic, logic for your applications, right? But then Compose multi-platform is like a plus to the multi-platform game with Kotlin and Jetpack Compose, because now it gives you the ability to share both code and UI, both the logic and the UI. Does that answer your question, Tashinga? I hope I got your name right. Okay, yes. Compose multi-platform works on iOS. I think I said earlier that it's still on alpha stage, meaning that there is a possibility that some APIs may change, but then this is something that the development team has agreed to work on and to proceed with. So with future releases, it will be more stable. What I would advise is it works on iOS. You can try it out on sample projects, but I would not advise you to try it out on production apps because you may have to face a huge refactor when the stable release is out. Okay, Emmanuel said, does this perform better to other cross-platform solutions? Um, Currently, it Compose multi-platform is it has a lot of potential, like I said, and it works perfectly well on desktop because desktop currently is the only stable version, desktop, and obviously Android, because Android is the native API we are used to, the regular API Jetpack Compose for Android. So it is stable and it is lightweight and it is faster, and a lot of companies are embracing Compose for desktop applications. So it's more lightweight and it's pretty much better. I would say, does that answer your question, Emmanuel?
Okay, thank you so much. Lab, let me know if you're able to hear me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Are you-
because
Am I breaking off again?
a bit, but I can hear you now.
Okay, I think that was a very informative session, and even from the feedback that is coming on, Bemitola says she would love to try it out. On
Thank
the
you,
other hand,
Lisa.
we have Rachel saying, "Thank you so much for such an interesting session,"
Thank
and
you,
also
Rachel.
from all the questions that you have received, I'm definitely sure that the audience loved the content that you shared. So
Thank
again,
you.
thank you so much for
Thank you.
setting aside time to talk about Compose multi-platform. Hopefully,
Thank you.
a lot of us get to try it out after this. Do you have any parting
Yes.
shots for us?
Any what?
Any parting shot, like last words before we end our broadcast?
Okay, okay, yeah, I would say Compose Multiplatform, though it's, still in development, right? It has a lot of, potentials, and I look forward to seeing the future. I think Emmanuel asked, he asked, how is it better than other cross-platform, solutions? Well, Compose multi-platform is basically built, with the Kotlin programming language, so it compiles directly and it's faster, which makes, development or runtime faster, and it also gives Android developers the opportunity to expand their interests. So if you're interested in building desktop applications, you don't need to begin learning new frameworks for you to work on UI. You can be a part of a desktop application, the development of a desktop application or iOS application, even with the knowledge you have of Jetpack Compose. And finally, I would say it's a tool that helps, squeeze down the development time. It helps you save time by writing, UI code once and sharing it across all platforms. So you wouldn't need to in future, probably when the web version is more stable, right? You would not need to write HTML or Swift code or UI code for your desktops, right? With Jetpack Compose, you can share this across all your platforms and then modify it in the platform for to suit your platform specific needs. My final word would be I think you should give it a try. I think I linked the links to the slides, the links you would need on the slides. So, Alela, would it be possible to share the slides? I think I'll send you the link to the slides when I upload them. So, yeah, you can always get those links, or you could always Google and you get more resources. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Alela. Big shout out to my fellow WDA participants and a big shout out to you too, Alela. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me know if you're able to hear me.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yeah, our speaker for the day was Love Otudor. She is a WTM ambassador, a participant of the Women Developer Academy, as well as an under developer and a technical writer. And so I guess just to wrap this up, I'm gonna say please go feel free to check out her content. You've definitely seen it's quality content. What's looking at some of the things that she has done before and shared with the community. And so we are going to wrap it off. But once again, thank you so much, Love. For me, it's been great just listening to you speaking as much as I had internet issues, and looking forward to having more sessions from you.
Thank
Um,
you.
yes. Um, Again, next week, same time, we will be having another session, a different speaker from the Women Developer Academy for Sub-Saharan Africa, and looking forward to having you all joining us. Once again, Love, thank you so much, and see you as you continue building the ecosystem with regards to the Android technology. Thank you,
Thank
Love.
you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Bye.
Bye bye.